Hi everyone. Well, things are getting crazy out there by the day, and I wanted to do this video because of what's going on between United States and Canada and the importance of that. And we're going to look again how it all has esoteric meaning and the future of what's going on between the partnership of Canada and the United States. It's very important that Trump keeps speaking about the 51st state is Canada. And I started to think about this, why he keeps repeating that number over and over again. And there is an esoteric understanding to that number, and I want to get into that. Now, this is all the big threat of what's going on with the history. Now, you guys that have read my book, okay, are going to start to understand how all the history of what's happened between United States, what the Patriot movement, and trying to actually capture Montreal, because I do believe, I've stated this before, Montreal is the new Jerusalem. Okay, it has really strong esoteric ties to Paris, and Paris being a very esoteric city, mainly regarding the Seine River. And in my book, I stated how the Seine River is representation of the Milky Way, right? And in that river, there's an island called Cygnus, which is the Northern Cross, and it has the Statue of Liberty on that in Paris. So there's a really huge connection. And if you understand the whole history of what happened with the natives, the French, and the Patriots, you'll understand that this is a cyclical cycle now that's happening with Pluto coming back in its one orbit since then. Okay, it's really important. It has to do with the soul, and it has to do with um, things wanting to have been to be in harmony, and that was taken away, and it was taken away from the British. Okay, the British came in and disrupted the harmony between the natives and the French, and it really caused havoc, and then it caused the French Revolution and all that. So there's a lot going on, and um, there's talking about this 25% tariff that Trump wants to put on, and how that's going to basically collapse the Canadian economy, which is probably necessary just so that a way that the banking system collapses. I do believe that, and I'm going to get into that and how that all ties into crypto. So stay with me with this video. There's a lot of stuff that connects, and where we're going in the future. Okay, it's already mapped out, and I basically knew that a few years ago when I wrote my book. Okay, all about this, and it's a matter of it's seeing it unfold right now, right in front of our eyes. It's mind blowing for me, anyhow. So basically, Trudeau went down to Mar-a-Lago, and then he had dinner with Trump. You guys must have known, I'll hear it all about this in the news. But there's this whole thing with the the premier of Ontario. He wants to threaten Trump back for wanting to put tariffs on Canada. So the premier of Ontario, who is his name is Ford. Okay, he's saying. Uh, this all goes back to the War of 1812. Okay, the War of 1812 is when the U.S. Patriots tried to come up here to free Montreal from the British. Okay, so they're constantly referencing that. And this is why it's so important, because that kind of has to be completed, that task in my mind. Okay, because the French and the Patriots we're all on the same side. Right. So, and then Ford says, didn't you guys burn down the White House? uh, or Trump said that. Yeah, you guys burnt down the White House, with Trudeau talking about, we don't want to have bad allies with you, So there's this whole thing that the British came over, the loyalists came over and burnt down the White House. And now Trump's joking, saying that Canada is going to be the 51st state, and Trudeau's going to be the governor of the 51st state instead of the Prime Minister of Canada. So there's a big joke going on there. Okay, so this is where I wanted to show you how this was all back in 1813, War of 1812. And on October 26, 1813, a combined British and Canadian forces consisting of 1,530 regulars, volunteers, and militia and Mohawk warriors from Lower Canada, which would be Quebec, commanded by Charles de Salaberry. There's a town here called Valleyfield de Salaberry. Okay. Um, and that's a French town, but it's named after, well, a Frenchman that was a loyalist to the British. Okay. So he repelled the American forces of 2,600 regulars, which were attempting to invade Lower Canada and ultimately attack Montreal. So Lower Canada was Quebec back in the day. And then they tried to come up through Plattsburgh as well and through the St. Lawrence River. They tried to make, and they were all supposed to join at Montreal and take over Montreal, but it never happened because the War of Chateauguay they lost that war. So they didn't get up the Chateauguay River towards Montreal. Battle of Chateauguay. Okay, so that's the history, right? So then we get into the esoteric number of the number 51. It's total completion of a five-sided or five-layered pentagon. So a pentagon is five sides, but then if you count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is the 5.5, and this was a 17th letter post, 5.5, and I always wondered, I always had in the back of my mind what it meant, and I really do believe it has to do with the number 51. Okay, and it's so that equals out the pentagon. Now the pentagon has esoteric meaning in the sky as well. And I've told you guys about this before, but we'll get into that. But I wanted to show you how the pentagon, okay, is actually built with the same sequence of five layers. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is the completion of the pentagon. And then somebody on my Discord channel, Gold Star Mom, she said, oh yeah, but 51 is triple 17. You know, we know what the 17th letter is. Okay, it's letter Q. And this all ties into a dart game. Okay, so, you know, the bullseye and the 51 is a triple 17. So it's kind of really esoteric when you think about it. Then I was like, do you remember my last video? I was talking about Obama, and he was, roasting Trump at that congressional dinner back in 2011. And they talked about all the rappers and everything. He made fun of Trump about his own birth certificate, Obama's birth certificate, and he pretended he was the king of the Lion King, which is really weird with Jay-Z right now and his daughter being and his wife being in the new Lion King. Um, and so I'm just like, okay, so that roasting of Trump, and he mentioned in that roasting, he mentioned the moon landing, that people actually don't believe that it happened and they believe in Area 51. So then I'm like, oh yeah, Area 51, right? Area 51, okay, is that homely airport, right? Homey airport. Um, and so, yeah, so that's all part of it, right? But did you see back there? I'm just going to go back. Did you see how it's a pentagon? Area 51, it has the five sides. It looks like a pentagon. So that, and they won't tell you why it's called that. They say the original name of this area, or the Area 51, is unclear. But I'm pretty sure it's the shape of it, okay? And the esoteric meaning of the number 51. They don't want you to zone in about the number 51, right? So in the sky, the right-hand fish of Pisces is a pentagon. This is called the circlet of Pisces. Now, the reason I put this date here, okay, March 20th, which is, you see the number 32. Number 32 is going to come up a lot. It's the 32 paths of the Kabbalah tree. And then when you master that, it's almost like you become the 33rd Mason kind of thing, right? It's the Jewish Kabbalah. So, but March 20th, 2006 is Baron Trump's birthday. And he's born with the circlet of Pisces, right by the sun. Okay, so that represents, in my mind, the crown of Christ. Okay, it's the perfect pent. Pent represents Venus. So the story of the two fish has to do with Venus as well, Venus and Cupid. The esoteric meaning of that, okay, goes back to a mythology. See, there's other people that believe in the circlet of Pisces, the crown on the head. It's not just me, okay? This is something that obviously is very esoteric. It's not spoken about a lot, but it's there, okay? Um, and in the Babylonian myths are also recorded details of the constellation Pisces. You know, it's like 100 BC, Pisces was recorded. Okay, so the identity of Pisces has been around for 3,000 years. Okay, so it's crazy, right? In ancient Syria, the fish were considered to be divine. They were Atagartis, the Syrian goddess of love and fertility, was imagined as a creature that was half woman and half fish. It is also Atagartis, who is believed to be the foundation of the myth of the Greek goddess Aphrodite and the Roman goddess Venus. Okay, so there's a story in Greek mythology that here it goes, Aphrodite, who's Venus, the goddess of love, and her son Eros, which is Cupid, they were running away from the sea monster Typhon. So then they tied themselves together so that they wouldn't get lost, and that's why the two fish are tied together. Okay, so that's the mythology of all that. So now, this is my theory, okay? The goddess, I know it sounds crazy, but this is Melania, and Baron is her son, okay, Cupid, okay? Now, because I do believe Baron is going to step forth in the future and take over the role of politics in the family, okay? So we'll see as time goes on, but that's my prediction, okay? So, um, yeah, so all this ties back to being one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Okay, and why did I put this in here? Mary was venerated as a virginal mother of God and as an intercessor. Yeah, it's basically the whole Mary goes back to Venus. Okay, it all ties into Venus and Artemis. Artemis is the moon goddess, temple of Artemis, the virgin goddess. So it has to do with the moon. Okay, Artemis is ruled by the moon. And she really, the moon and Venus, they're kind of like one and one. Okay. And they were both virgins, Mary and Artemis. And the moon rules the family tree, the family house, right? The fourth house in Cancer. And so sometimes I think of Jesus as the moon and also as Neptune. And esoterically, Neptune and the moon relate to each other. Okay, so he's the healer, Neptune is the healer, but when he's born from the Virgin, he's the moon. So that's partly why Artemis is the moon goddess. Okay, so this is how it all kind of layers on top of each other, the mythology. Now, what was interesting, then we had the celebration of the opening of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. And they did it on the 8th of December. Well, actually on the 7th, on the evening. Okay. This is all for the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Now, she was conceived without a father, the same as Jesus was. Okay. So she also had an Immaculate Conception. And she was born on December 8th, but on December 8th, 9 months before, she was conceived. Okay, so that's why they did that on that day of the opening of the reopening of. Now, you know, here she is. It looks like, you know, people think, oh, she's standing on the world, but a lot of times the Virgin has the moon at her feet, and that's in the Book of Revelations as well, and also in the church in Montreal, the Bon Secours Church, the Virgin Mary is standing there with a crescent moon at her feet in that church. It's the first church in Montreal, and I do believe could be the first church in North America. Okay, don't quote me on that, but it's a very, very old church. Okay, so the historical development of the Immaculate Conception is closely tied to the theology debates of the Middle Ages. So what's interesting is that the nature of Mary's conception and her role in the incarnation of Jesus Christ, the Franciscan order. Now, this all ties into RFK Jr. He wrote a book about the Franciscan order of Saint Francis de Assisi. I mentioned that in my last video. That's very, very important. And they were also part of the founding of Montreal, and they would take vows to poverty. So eventually, the Roman Catholic Church didn't like that, and they brought in their other order of the Jesuits order that came into Montreal. And the Jesuits didn't like the fact that the natives were able to roam free. And then they tried to, force them to settle on one piece of land, which was against their whole, you know, religious beliefs or their spiritual beliefs. So the Franciscan order was more willing to let them live in their own natural way. So, there's a lot of money money did a lot to a lot of different people, right? So Trump in Paris, the reopening of Notre Dame. So this is, yeah. And so he met with Macron and Zelensky there, the Ukraine guy. And yeah, and why is it so important about to the Templars? Because this all ties back to the Templars. The Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was put to death by fire in front of the Notre Dame Cathedral. So this is why that cathedral is so important, okay? Because it happened on a scaffold, on an island, just on the Seine River, in the Notre Dame de Paris, okay? In March, they don't like to say the date of March, but 1314. So it's kind of interesting because Baron is born in March. Okay, so yeah, it represents spring. March represents spring in the tropical zodiac, and yeah, and I just think it's kind of really more esoteric because that's where the crown of Christ is in March in the sidereal astrology. Okay, so now, so we know it's all tied to the Crusades, and I'm going to let you know, I don't think I put a slide for that, but the Montreal Castle in Jordan is the very first name I could find about Montreal. And that was a Templars crusade castle that was fighting the Muslims were stealing from the people that were doing the pilgrimage through Europe to get to Jerusalem. They were getting robbed and and killed, and because the Muslims didn't want them to go to Jerusalem. So anyhow, they built castles there to protect the pilgrims. Okay, so this goes way back to this, and this is why everything's going on in Jerusalem right now. It's all part of that. Okay, so now this is the famous handshake that Macron and Trump, they always do this really, really long handshake. Okay, and I am convinced like these guys are like um, Freemasons, and they know what's going on. And I know people think that's all bad, but I do believe that there's two groups of Freemasonry. It's kind of like the Franciscan order compared to the Jesuit order. Okay, they both are under the church, the Catholic Church, but they're two different ideologies inside the order. Okay, so there's like you have to really understand history to start to see how, it can be the same thing, but they're not representing the same thing. Okay, so now they do this handshake. And of course, this time it lasted 17 seconds, coming short of the previous record of 29 seconds. And my next video, okay, I am going to give you guys the biggest Christmas present ever. And I'm going to decode the number 29, and I'm going to decode the Hogapolatry to our current timeline. Okay, and this all came to me when all this number 51 was coming up in the news. It just came to me one day and I was like, oh my God, it's right there in front of me. I haven't seen it. Okay, so this, number 17 is important because it ties to number 51, the crown, but this is also important. And if you understand esoteric numbers, you could see this would be 11:9. This goes to Psalms 11:9. Okay, I did a video on that, and you guys need to go check that out again. Okay, very, very important esoteric numbers. Okay, so now Francois Legault, who is the premier of Quebec, was at the opening of the Notre Dame Cathedral on December 7th. And he shook hands with Trump and also with Elon Musk. And this is really, really important for Quebec and Montreal because Legault is from Montreal, but Trudeau wasn't there. So the Prime Minister of Canada wasn't there, but the Quebec Premier was there. Okay, so even the French are all talking about this. Like they're like, wow, what's going on? Okay. So in the news. So Legault also said he met with Musk, Tesla CEO, to discuss, among other things, international trade and electrical vehicles. Okay, this is a very vague statement. I'm going to tell you what they're talking about. Okay, just wait, I got slides for it. Okay, so yeah, and then he ended up talking to Henry Paul Rouzeau, who was a delegate general in Paris. Okay. The two men discussed the political situation in France and the United States, according to Legault. Okay. So they're like, this is like, you got to read between the headlines on the news. You got to kind of dig. Okay. Now, this is what's going on here. I don't know if you guys just saw it in the news, but Quebec just signed with Churchill, um, the Churchill project in Newfoundland, the electrical hydro plant. They they're going to be expanding it, and the natives were opposed to it. But this time they did a deal with Newfoundland, with because the last deal was, I think, done in 1969 or something, and Newfoundland was getting ripped off. Quebec was making more money than Newfoundland, even though the dam and the power plant is in Newfoundland, and the natives got nothing. So now they've done a deal with the natives, Newfoundland, and so Quebec will be producing the most hydro in all of North America. Now, this is really, really important, not just for electrical cars. It ties into cryptocurrency and these bit farms. Okay, so when they do the mining for the crypto, these computers get really, really super hot, okay, and they need to be cooled down. So the best place to do it is in northern Quebec. They also create a lot of sound, so they can't be done in areas where there's lots of population. And they've done the Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency is getting, if you go read headlines about cryptocurrency in Quebec and all these bit farms, you'll see there's a lot of talk about it. And it's kind of like we're like the paradise for crypto, okay, in Quebec. And so I am convinced that Trump wants to, do a partnership with Quebec in the negotiations of the tariffs and everything and trade, and not the rest of Canada. Okay, he's going to like let the rest of Canada go, and it's just going to be Quebec because it kind of ties into the whole prophecy that the French and the Patriots, were always on the same side. Okay, so they're talking about it here. They're talking about how much we're going to need 18,000 more megawatts of electricity to fill the demand. Okay, and they were squawking about it back in the day, but now they're like super happy about it. Okay, now all what's going on here is this came out in November that Legault wants to start creating a new constitution for Quebec. So we're going to be back into probably what happened back in the 70s when they were trying to separate from Canada, but it will probably be done because of what's going on with the United States and the tariffs, and it will be done in a way that it's like more logical. He's come out and said that there's no way he's going to put um, tariffs on the United States for putting tariffs on us, even though Doug Ford from Ontario said that he's going to cut off electricity to Minnesota, New York, and I think Vermont on his border. He's going to stop electricity going over there. Well, he gets his electricity mainly from Quebec too. Well, there are hydro dams in Ontario too, but the bigger ones are all in Quebec. So it's just kind of crazy. It's just like you can see what's coming down the tubes here. So yeah, so he's basically saying that he wants study the province's rights to enhance its powers within the federation. What many saw as a bid to please the nationalist base. So there's lots of nationalist patriots in Quebec. The United States doesn't want all of Canada because most of the rest of Canada are extremely leftist because of the programming up here. We don't have a lot of conservative news outlets that promote conservative way of thinking. So, but Quebec is kind of a little bit more, nationalist because they're proud of their heritage and everything. So they're waiting now at the time when Donald Trump has been elected in the United States, where there'll be a wind of conservatism blowing across the rest of Canada that is different from Quebec. I think it would be a good symbolic element of unity in relation to our values, she said. And this is when they're kind of like going to sneak in this kind of um, new constitution for Quebec. So it's still unclear how many of the reports of the 42 recommendations, 42 is an interesting number. This year is 24, it's the reverse, but there's 42 judges in Egyptian mythology. So recommends the government might adopt, especially since several of them would require negotiations from the federal government. So they're basically saying, yeah, they're open to, creating a new constitution. Now, the last Olympics was in Paris this year. The next one we know was all tied to the rappers performing, at in LA for the closing ceremonies. Now, this logo that they originally started with, okay, was the angel. Okay, and I never realized that Los Angeles is actually named after the Virgin Mary. I never knew that. Okay, so the inauguration of the annual Grand Marian procession into the heart of downtown Los Angeles is a historic core. So yeah, that just kind of blew me away because I didn't know. Like I just thought it meant like lost angel. I didn't know it was all to do with the Virgin Mary. So it's so like perfect that that's where the next Olympics is going to be. Yeah, it's very important. So then this came up. Yeah, this is ties to the 40 days after the birth of Jesus. Okay, so the earliest feasts that relate to Mary grew out of a cycle of feasts that celebrated the nativity of Jesus, giving the according to the Gospel of Luke to 40. 40 days after the birth of Jesus, along with the presentation of Jesus at the temple, Mary was purified according to the Jewish customs. The Feast of Purification began to celebrate by the 5th century. So I was like, okay, 40 days after the birth of Jesus. Oh yeah, right. It's Candlemas, right? It's February 2nd, the number 22, 22. And it's called the Epiphany of Christmas, right? It's to do with the light of the world. But again, it's very esoteric. 33 days after the boy's circumcision. Okay, so there's the number 33, right? And we know that's really important to Freemasonry. That's their number, right? So I was like going, okay, so, it's Groundhog Day 2, the Groundhog Day movie. I think I did a video and all that a long time ago. So came back to Candlemas. So I'm like, okay, February 2nd. Oh my God, it's the 33rd day of the year. Okay, and there's 332 days remaining at the end of the year. Well, 332 could be 2033, for a year date, but it's just, again, it's 3-3. It's always the 3-3, right? So that's the completion. So it's kind of like, wow, okay, that's pretty cool. So there's some definitely esoteric meaning to all that. So then, yeah, this is funny. I just saw some memes about Trump, but he doesn't want all of Canada. He just wants Quebec over here. Um, And then here, this is funny. This one, they're showing all the provinces being renamed up in Canada. Yeah, they're all renamed except Quebec. Excuse me. So this is hilarious. They're naming them like, native names or whatever. Oh, Saskatchewan's still the same. But anyhow, I just thought that was funny that people are like doing memes about this. And then when Donald Trump posted this, I was like, why the heck is he showing a Swiss Alp when he's talking about Canada? So it took me a little while to figure this one out, but I didn't want to do a video until I had figured it out. So anyhow, so the Matterhorn, right? The highest peak in the Swiss Alps. And they're talking about this. They're like, this will almost certainly not be the end of it. The 51st state joke, the weird Matterhorn thing, the great state of Canada line, and all of its getting attention, which is the thing Trump loves the most. The only thing to do is respond in response is to do nothing at all. Don't make a fuss. Don't be offended, They're kind of like saying like, it's a joke at first, but I think by now they're realizing it's not a joke. Okay, so Matterhorn is a pyramidal peak. Okay, so basically it has four sides that look like a pyramid. So in itself, that's esoteric. It's also has faces the four compass points. So it's very important. It faces north, south, east, west. Okay, and it has four names. One of them is the lion. And I thought, well, maybe these are, but this one means horn. I think this one means fur, and I can't remember what this is, but I couldn't get any meaning, esoteric meaning out of those four names. So I kept digging around. I was like, okay, there's got to be a reason why he put the Matterhorn there. Then I was kind of, okay, Walt Disney, what, how it is in, more recent culture. It's the Toblerone chocolate. So I'm like, okay, well, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, it's nothing really there. But then I was like, okay, wow, I found it. It has to do with the Way of St. James. This was a passage that went through the mountains, and it's called the French Way. Okay, now the Way of St. James is a pilgrimage passage for the pilgrims to get to a church in Spain. Okay, so they were coming through here, through the Swiss Alps here, and then it was part of this whole journey. And this is called the Way of St. James through Europe. Now they use the stars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12 stars. But this symbol is the scallop. It's the scallop fish, which is Venus again. So yeah, and they call it the Camino, which means the chemin means a road. It's the path, right? That's in Spanish, but in French it's chemin. The French way of the northern routes in Spain. The French way. So it's always the French way. So that's why he did that meme, right? He's standing there looking at Canada, but he's pretending he's looking at Canada or thinking about Canada, but he's looking at this Swiss Alps, and it's related to the French way. So he's like basically doing like a really cool decode there where he's basically saying, I'm just talking about Quebec, not talking about the rest of Canada. Okay, so they followed the routes into France. Okay, so in here they're showing it's a scallop symbol, and they use this on the route, to mark the route, and that's all tied to Venus as well. Even in Lyon, Spain, St. James shell. Yeah, so it's kind of cuckoo. Um, the Way of St. James was one of the most important Christian pilgrimage during the Middle Ages. Primary route. Yeah, and they go to the Saint. So okay, here they even include the Via Francigena to Rome, the pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Okay, so they go to Jerusalem as well, and it's all tied to seeing the vision of the Virgin Mary. Okay, so St. James had spent time preaching the gospel in Spain, but returned to Judah upon seeing the vision of the Virgin Mary on the bank of the Ebro River. So there you go. It's all baptized to Mary, and the Venus and Mary are kind of the same. They're just layers of mythology. So the scallop shell all ties to Venus, right? You can see that in Sandro Botticelli's famous painting of Venus, which I spoke intensely, a lot about in the past. Okay, so now this blew me away because at night, the Milky Way overhead seems to point the way of the route. Okay, and it's called the Voie lactée, which means the trail of the milk. Okay, so in Milky Way. So now, I don't know if you guys watched the Game of Thrones. Their town was called, the city that they were always fighting over was called Land's End. So this is all tied to that as well. So yeah, the Milky Way is above. And then they're saying the Milky Way, it was called, they kind of called it El Camino de Santiago. According to the common medieval legend, the Milky Way was formed by the dust raised by the traveling pilgrims. Isn't that crazy? I just think, wow. It's crazy. It's like all coming around. So now, I don't know if you guys ever noticed this, if you've ever had the opportunity to look up at the sky, if it's not too bright from the lights on St. John Baptiste Day, which is the national holiday of Quebec. Um, if you look up at the night sky, you'll see Cygnus, the Northern Cross, and this is a constellation in the Milky Way. So these are the Milky Way constellations. Okay, so you have Perseus, you have Cassiopeia, which is a W. You can kind of see that in the sky pretty clearly in the summertime. She's the queen of heaven. Then there's the king of heaven, Cepheus. Then there's Cygnus, the goose. Okay. Now, usually they kind of cut it off here so that it looks like a cross. And in the summer solstice, or around St. John Baptiste Day, it's lying this way, kind of like a sword. Okay. It doesn't look like a cross. But later on, as it comes down here, it looks like a cross standing up on the horizon. So then you have the eagle, Aquila, you have Scutum. I need to do another video on this because that's the old Scutum shield was the red cross that the Templars used. But on the next video I'm going to get more into detail why it was named this and the importance of that. And then we have the Golden Gate here. This is where the Milky Way crosses the ecliptic. See, this is where the planets cross on this red line. And that's called the Golden Gate. And it's at the point of Sagittarius and Ophiuchus and Scorpio. Okay, it's a big golden bubble in the Milky Way. So there you go. So that's really, really important to all of this because there's the Northern Cross coming down. Okay, so that's kind of what people see up in the sky. You don't see the little wings of the goose. So yeah, it's the cross. It's all about Jesus. I'm telling you, it's like everything's about Jesus. Okay, so the way of St. James is said to have originated in France, where it is called the Chemin de Saint Jacques de Compostelle. This is the reason that the Spanish themselves refer to the way of St. James as the French road, since most of the pilgrims they saw were French. The origin of the pilgrim is most often cited in the Codex Calixtinus, which is decidedly a French document, though the Codex everyone was called upon to join the pilgrimage. There was four main starting points in the cathedral cities, in Tours, Valais, Le Pont de Velay, and Arles. They are today all routes to the Grand Randonnée network. Now we can go into digging more about all this, but it's all to do with Jerusalem, obviously, and the French. So now the symbol that they use, this is kind of wild for Canada. The song "O Canada" was really built. The lyrics were changed, but it was originally a Quebec patriot song, and it had lyrics about freedom and da 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 da. So we have that in the "O Canada" song, the English version, but in our flag is red and white. So how they marked sometimes the French did, they marked red and white bars on the pilgrimage path. So I was just like, whoa, that's crazy. So yeah, and then in Switzerland they use red and white bars or yellow diamonds. So yeah, that's all part of the French way path. Now, there's a hotel in Montreal called the Hotel Le St. James. It's actually recently closed down. But this hotel, anytime someone famous came to Montreal, like Elton John, Mick Jagger, Britney Spears, they always stayed in that hotel. Okay, so it's closed down now. I think they're doing condos there, but it doesn't surprise me, It's one of the swankiest hotels, but it was not a huge hotel. But then we also have a cathedral. It's now called, there we go, Mary Queen of the World Cathedral. Okay. But it used to be called St. James Cathedral. Okay. So it's all relating to St. James because St. James saw the vision in Jerusalem and Judah about Mary, right? So that's kind of why they changed the name. But because it's all related to the same thing. But I went in this church. This church has lots of huge, huge paintings of the conversion of the natives. And this church is right across from the big, huge round ring that they put in Montreal. I did a video on that a long time ago, and I will do it again because it also ties to Washington, D.C. And I'll mention that in my next video. It's very important. That ring is like sacred to going up the mountain in Montreal to see the cross up on the top of the mountain. You can see the cross through the ring after you leave this church. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's really, they've made all of this for that. So okay, so then this is what got me totally like understanding there was something going on with number 51. Okay, so China bans export of critical minerals to the United States as trade tensions escalate. So this was back in July 2023. And they're talking about gallium and germanium, but they also have, I'm going, okay, why are they pointing to the number 32? Because I know this is about Kabbalah, right? Then they have the number 33, Freemasonry, and below on the periodic table, the number 51 is there, below the number 33. Okay, so this ties to, the crown of Christ. This is the pentagon, right? So I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So then I found another picture where they use China, and they don't show the number 33, but they show 51. So I'm like, okay, what's the 51st, element? They're talking about ganium. They do talk about this one too, but they kind of don't put it on the picture. They talk about it in the article. So that 51, oh, sorry, it's here. I should have moved that slide over a bit, but anyhow, that is the 51st element, and it's the all-seeing eye of Ra. The name derives from the Greek antimosis, meaning not alone. It's the antimony. Now, what do they use this for? This has to do with, it's a mineral used for ammunition. Okay, so, excuse me, if China is going to block all these minerals, um, that's a problem for United States. So, um, especially with I think there's a 65% tariff on everything coming from China. So they have to get these minerals from somewhere else. Well, guess what? Quebec just happens to have a new mine that's opening up of antimony, and they've got tons of new mines like expanding in Quebec for lithium, so, we're mineral rich province. So, for sure, that's where it's going to be coming from. So the Eye of Horus symbol, which ties to the 51st element there, antimony, is a symbol of the ancient Egyptians that is used for protection and to connote power and good health. The symbol comes from Horus, the sky god in the ancient Egyptian, whose eye was injured and then restored, which is why the symbol can be used for transformation, healing, redemption. The symbol that can be also called the widget. Okay, so I think that's super important. The price of antimony, scarce in nature but essential in military equipment such as ammunition, infrared missiles, nuclear weapons, and night vision goggles, rallied early. Okay, so so here they're talking about it already. China is the world's largest antimony producer and dominates the production of many strategic materials, but that's all cut off now. So now we have they're talking about gallium and germanium. I'm not sure if those are in Quebec. These are used for semiconductors, solar panels, and weapons as well, and EV batteries. I know we have lots of lithium here too, so yeah. So then they're talking about here, why did I put this here? Henkel halts delivery. Yeah, this is just to say that some North American antimony graphite players ramped up output. Yeah, so they're starting to ramp it up in North America. Yep, that's what's happening. And here, we are monitoring the global supply situation of antimony very closely and aim to restore solutions to fulfill our customers' orders. Oh, yeah. Now, this, I don't know if you guys watched this. I think it was like lip synced or AI generated. It's Baron Trump singing a song about faith, family, and the House of Light. And I thought this was really important because if you look at the picture, there's something going on over here, right? They have the phoenix, and then there's a face here that's looking like a Templar. So I was like, and there was a million views on this, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a Templar. That's the phoenix rising, right? And that's what this is all about. The phoenix rising, okay? And this all ties into the Aquarian age. So, oh man, I'm just like so blown away by all this. It's like getting crazy, but I can't wait to give you the biggest gift I can give you guys. I've spent like at least 7 years studying all this stuff, and I finally figured out how it's all relating to our timeline and what is the exact day and the exact year. I have the date now, and you won't get me to be able to move off of it. And you'll know why after I do the next video. So stay with me. I know it's been a long journey, and I appreciate you guys that have been there, dedicated, listening to me for the last like forever, it seems like. But I'm grateful that you have too, because you kept me going, and I kept trying to figure it out, right? So, but yeah, we're in a movie, and we can't stop it. We just have to join it. And the whole crypto thing, I think, is really important. I did actually recently, a few months ago, put a little bit of money into crypto and Bitcoin, and it's doubled. So crypto, I do think, is what Trump is going to be taking the banks down with. I really think it's the new system, even though I don't like the whole AI thing and the computer thing, and I prefer nature. But maybe they'll want more people living off grid, because the hydro consumption of these crypto mines and just the whole trying to cool them down and everything is going to be demanding on the grid. So I think there's some way of balancing it all out. And I have more faith that this is all going to, really be an interesting journey that we're going to see, especially if the relationship between the French and the Patriots in North America, unite in a way that they want to get rid of the monarchy. And I was reading about this new constitution that they want in Quebec, and they basically said, "We'll give the minority English rights back to the Quebecers that are English if they accept to get rid of the monarchy, of that we're not ruled by the Queen anymore here." So it's very important. This is very important to the French people as well. Just as much as having, excuse me, the freedom that the United States wants from having their own autonomy in their finances. So it's all part of it. So yeah, and then we do have hydro here and we do have minerals here and we should be wealthy, but Canada always kinds of, through the Federation, they kind of suppress the French province, they don't give them the funding. And so there's all these complications. So I think it's like people are just fed up. So I think we're going to be trading directly with you guys, and that's basically what Legault was saying. He wants to trade with Trump. He's not, going to cut any electricity off from the United States. They're going to actually start to, bring the hydro there at a cheaper rate, I guess, than what's happening out west. So yeah, that's it. So invest in some Bitcoin. I think it's going to skyrocket once Trump hits the office. That's my prediction with all this what's being set up here. And this is supposed to be the New Jerusalem. So there will be a whole new currency that will be hard for criminals that want to, spend money in the underworld, kind of like, with trafficking kids and stuff, that it will be very, very hard for them to do that. Okay, so if it's done in a different monetary system. So I think that's where it's going. That's just my opinion. Doesn't have to be yours. But anyhow, I will get the next video out before Christmas. That's my goal. And if not, it'll be between Christmas and New Year's. But it's definitely the end of all my videos in a way. Like it's the completion of everything that I've studied. And then we'll just track it all after. But I definitely yeah, it's so divine, mathematically, astrologically, and our current times. It's all like tied together, and it's all tied to the Kabbalah. Okay, so it's and the tarot. So it's like mind blowing. But I'll share that with you next time. Take care, guys. Bye.